What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy, and I kind of wanted to expand a little bit on my comments from a couple weeks ago about mail-in voting and fraudulent votes and that kind of stuff. Kind of want to dive deeper into the idea of, really different kinds of voting, but specifically, mail-in votes versus absentee ballots, kind of delineating or differentiating what each thing is, what it means, and just some different facts about it. So, the main resource I have looked at regarding this is actually just something from dictionary.com, which, if dictionary.com is not reliable, then I'm not sure who I can trust in this world. But, so, generally speaking, absentee ballots, first off, are an approved legal way to vote in every state, period. Like, if you can verify that you are not going to be in your registered county of voting for various reasons, and it kind of differs from state to state, but if you can prove that you're not going to be able to vote within your registered county on, the accepted voting day, then you're allowed to file for an absentee ballot, which allows you to vote through a mail-in process. And the thing is, all those absentee ballots are done by mail. And there might be a slightly different process between that and other mail-in voting, but to the best of my knowledge, there isn't like a super significant difference other than places that do mail-in voting otherwise. Like, it's just kind of across the board. Like, the particular county or state even just does all their votes by mail, because I guess it's kind of simpler and or gets more people access to voting. Like, okay, Hawaii, it's literally a chain of islands. It kind of makes sense to do mail-in votes in Hawaii, because what else are they going to do? How else are they going to collect all the different votes? I mean, is it possible? Sure. Is it convenient? Heck no. So, there are some states that will just have all registered voters sent a ballot by mail that they then fill out or not and mail back to have their votes counted. Some people have found and argued that there are ways this system can be manipulated, and I'm not currently aware of the finer details of how this works because I have not cast a vote by mail. I don't know what all verification goes into it. I mean, first off, you have to be a legally registered voter to even receive a mail-in vote at your address. So there's one barrier to it. Also, like, I would assume, or at least I would hope, that there is some form of identification that you need to use as part of your mail-in ballot, like at least putting your social security number on there or something like that. Now, some concerns have been raised over the fact that, like, in certain areas, registered voters who have deceased are still getting, mail-in ballots at their former addresses, and people could, like, misuse those to inflate numbers and things like that. But I mean, we don't really know how likely that actually is. But in any case, personally, I want to rewind this back a bit to just the absentee ballot idea. I think there are some places where absentee ballots at least kind of need to be expanded. Like, I actually looked into this for the state of Texas. I went to, like, the Texas voter website, basically, and looked up the form to apply for an absentee ballot. Now, I did this because I wasn't sure with my work, how available I would be to vote on election day this year. Basically, your employer has to, within the state of Texas, allow you time to go and vote on election day. Which, I feel like unless people were to file lawsuits, that would be a little difficult to enforce. Also, I think just the general idea of absentee ballots and its availability should be expanded within the state of Texas, because when I looked it up, the only reasons I could find were you're not going to be present in your county or you're over 65. Those were the only excusable allowances that would get you an absentee ballot. Never mind being a worker at the polls. Never mind, never mind being a student. Although, if you're a student who is out of your registered county, then you can use the whole out-of-county excuse. But I don't know. I feel like in at least the case of Texas, there needs to be maybe some more allowances made for absentee voting rather than just having that law that, again, might be a little difficult to enforce about employers requiring or employers being required to allow time to vote on election day. Just because an employer allows a person time to vote, like, granted, the state of Texas could be entirely different, but, like, I've heard plenty of stories from people around where I grew up in Pennsylvania having trouble actually going to the physical polling locations and voting just because of there being long lines. Like, people have had to wait hours in line just to vote. So I'm not super aware of what allowances are given in Pennsylvania for absentee ballots and stuff like that. But in any case, really, I think there needs to be a lot of room for people to be able to send in absentee ballots. But at the same time, going back to the whole mail-in voting idea, absentee ballots are all done by mail. And while certain states might have a particular system set up where they already are planning on mail-in votes, that's how they do like all of their voting, or if not whole states, then certain counties. Like, other than already having a planned system in place, it's like how differently would an absentee ballot be treated than other voting by mail? So, like, I'm not sure I get what all the fuss was over the idea of absentee ballots being fine, but general mail-in voting is not. Now, again, a big concern with mail-in voting has been the idea of voter fraud. And first off, the the worry about voter fraud has been elevated recently just because of, recent accusations, findings of Russian tampering with the last presidential election, and just accusations, at least, of greater voter fraud in some recent elections. But that hasn't necessarily been applied solely or even primarily to mail-in voting. In fact, a lot of the worries of fraudulent voting has come from outdated voting machines that are being used longer than they're expected to reasonably work accurately. So, again, this is kind of coming from dictionary.com, and they cite a study, they cite data from the Heritage Foundation. Now, I'm trying to see when exactly this article was written, and I can't seem to find it exactly, but, if you look up mail-in voting dictionary.com, you'll be able to find this article there. But in any case, so according to the Heritage Foundation, over the past 20 years from whenever this article was written, there have been 250 million votes cast by mail. And out of those, only 1,285 proven cases of voter fraud have actually been found. Now, if you're wondering what that means percentage-wise, it is 0.000514% of votes. That is about 0.005% of a percent of votes by mail that have been found fraudulent. That's a super low percentage. You would have to multiply that 100 times to even get 0.5%. So, again, the especially Republican and Trumpian, really Trumpian notion of mail-in votes, being fraudulent at high rates, I find it hard to agree with that, because the numbers as they currently are, even if you believe that those are underrepresenting voter fraud, it's highly unlikely they would be so massively underrepresenting it that it's even equivalent to a significant portion of mail-in votes that are fraudulent. Again, it would have to be 100 times that amount to even get 0.5%. So, I'm not sure I see what the problem is here. I don't know what people are worried about. Going back to my comment from a couple of weeks ago, where if you believe a 6%, even, wait. Hold up. So even the pure number of deaths from COVID-19, even if you take the somewhat recent CDC estimates of only 6% of all the COVID deaths being purely from COVID, even if you just take that number, you arrive at an amount that is not quite over, but it's nearly 10 times the total number of fraudulent mail-in votes estimated by the Heritage Foundation for 20 years. So, if you think COVID rates are no big deal, but you think voter fraud rates are through mail-in votes, then I'm sorry, there is no logical consistency to your argument. So that's the main point that I really wanted to get at with this. Like, mail-in votes, if anything, based on the data that I can find, mail-in votes should be expanded. The fact that there's such a low rate of voter fraud from mail-in votes just proves to me that it's a very accurate, thorough, and trustworthy system. So, contrary to what Donald Trump and the Republican Party wants us to believe as of late, it seems to me that mail-in votes should be expanded, if anything, even if just expanding the availability of absentee ballots in various states. I even watched a PragerU video on the matter, and it made some good points, but at the same time, it made some claims that were kind of false. It made it seem like, because of there suddenly being this massive swing towards a Democratic candidate in Orange County, I think it was Orange County, California, because of this massive swing towards Democrats, towards the Democratic candidate in this county, and, the fact that all those votes were mail-in votes just proves that it was all fraudulent. Whether or not you believe that to be the case, the claim was made within this video that, Orange County, right up until the 2018 election, had been sort of this bastion of Republican loyalty, and it's not entirely accurate to say that that was the case until the 2018 election. It was actually the 2016 election that flipped Orange County. So, people are trying to use almost truths like that to make us worried about the viability of mail-in voting. And if you look it up, it's kind of hard to really see evidence of it being that significant an issue. And again, even if there were fraudulent votes in Orange County, California for the 2018 election, it would have to be at such a massively higher rate than the current known rate of voter fraud that, other people would need to be hiding something, and I highly doubt that has been the case across the board for a significant amount of time. Anyway, I'm kind of digressing and talking in circles on the same point now. So, whatever your thoughts are on the whole mail-in voting idea, if there's information I'm missing, which I'm sure there's stuff I haven't mentioned, feel free to engage in discussion down in the comments. But again, I think at least the idea of absentee ballots needs to be expanded in some states, specifically Texas, because there are other reasons why people would end up missing a vote. But anyway, it also makes more sense to me to have wider mail vote options rather than having a law that penalizes an employer for preventing a physical lack of ability of their employee to go vote. Like, why not just have them be able to vote by mail? They could do it on their own time, and the employer wouldn't be in any legal trouble, and it would take away the need for that employee to miss time on the clock on election day. Like, they could continue working at the normal rate for the normal amount of time, even on election days. So why not expand that some? Anyway, again, leave your thoughts down in the comments. And as always, like, share, subscribe, click the bell. Just look down in the description for more info on how to keep up with my YouTube channel and my other social media pages and all that kind of stuff. So that's it. I hope you're all doing well. Hopefully, with all these kind of election prep videos that I've been putting out there, that I've gotten people to think a little more about this upcoming election. I think by the time this one hits, it's going to be roughly a month before the next election, or at least that's what I'm hoping. It might not be quite that, roughly a month. So hopefully that'll give you some time to process what I've said and put it to use as you're hearing from different candidates and trying to decide who you want to vote for. But anyway, that's all I've got on the whole election idea, because I don't want to keep adding new bits of info as it gets close to crunch time. So anyway, hopefully y'all tune in for the next video, whatever it might be. But until then, stay cool, people.